The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is wonderful that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 booths here. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were filled with awe. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. Lead questions for today. Question number 1. Is there a relationship between the first reading, Daniel 7:9-14, and the gospel passage? If there is, what is it? 2. What is St. Peter saying to us in the second reading, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 16-19? Question 3. Quote, the event of the Transfiguration reveals the true identity of Jesus Christ to his disciples and to us. Discuss briefly. Question 4. Reflect for a moment. Don't just jump to answer. Reflect for a moment on the story of the Transfiguration of Christ, which we have just read. What is the Lord saying to you in your life circumstances as you reflect on this story now? When we read the scriptures, God is supposed to be talking to us, right? So, we have read it, and I'm asking you to reflect further on it. What is the Lord saying to you with that passage in your life circumstances? Yes, Mike.
I want to answer question 1.
Go ahead.
If I may say, actually the 3 readings are all linked together. They have a relationship with one another. And if I were to teach on this topic, it's like today the church begins with the end rather from the beginning. I would have, for example, taken the gospel as the first reading, and then I would take Peter's writing
as
the second reading, and Daniel's prophecy as the last reading.
That is if you are the one preparing the missal.
Exactly.
Thank God you are not the one preparing the missal.
This is because what Daniel wrote about, an apocalyptic writing, a futuristic writing,
yes,
was the revelation of the end times, of what's going to happen at the end time.
Yes.
when the glory of Jesus Christ as the Son of God and the Messiah of the world
It's fully revealed.
is fully revealed.
So why should it be the third reading?
So why should it be the
First
the
reading.
first? It should be,
Aha.
it should be at the end to actually tell us this is where we are heading for.
Give him a resounding applause.
And of course, the gospel reveals to us the glory of God of Jesus Christ in God in the interim.
Okay.
Because Jesus Christ himself referred to himself as the Son of Man, showing us that he was both man and God. But today we see the glory of God that he shared with God from the beginning, revealed in him when he was transfigured on Mount Tabor. This was the day the disciples, the three disciples, the inner cycle, saw the glory that he shares with his Father from the beginning.
In the interim.
In the interim. And so that sort of revealed to them the divinity of Jesus Christ, and that he shared the glory of God the Father, and that is indeed not just the Son of Man, it's also the Son of God, because God himself testified to the Father that this is my beloved Son, listen to him. Now, if I may quickly take on St. Peter's writing. St. Peter, having witnessed the revelation of the glory of Jesus Christ, was able to now testify to us that, look, it is no ordinary story. It's no fable. It is not a concocted story. This is what I witnessed. I am an eyewitness to this. I saw the glory of God revealed in him, Jesus Christ. And it is better you believe this, because while you are going through the darkness of this world, this is what will sustain your faith, knowing that at the end, that glory we will see. That is when we get to the kingdom of God.
Come and stand here and do the preaching. You have finished preaching the homily now. This is the summary of my homily. You have finished preaching it. Thank you very much. I think you are too old. Otherwise, you would have been the next for me to promise a gift. But you are too old. Anyway, you can still give gift to old people. Yes, Ekene.
I want to answer question 4.
Yes. Have you reflected?
Yes, Father.
Okay.
What the Lord is saying to me in my life circumstances is that...
We shall ask you what your life circumstances are about. Okay, just tell us, yes?
Example. My life circumstances include the life I am living now. What the Lord is saying to me is that there is hope.
In case you think there's no hope, the Lord is saying there is
hope.
Yes.
And the transfiguration is an example, as Jesus showed his glory to his disciples.
Yes.
He is showing us a tiny bit of what we are going to see in heaven.
Tiny little bit of what we are
going to see in heaven. And yet, the 3 disciples were awed.
They were awed. Even this tiny little infinitesimal bit, they were mesmerized. They were awed. Okay.
And the Lord is saying to me that whatever I am going through in this world is not everlasting.
Are you going through anything? You are enjoying now. Okay, in case you go through anything in life,
it is not everlasting.
It's not everlasting. That what is awaiting you
is greater.
What is awaiting you is glory beyond description. Give her a round of applause. Yes, what do you mean?
I would like to answer question 3.
Yes.
Question 3. The event of the Transfiguration reveals the true identity of Jesus Christ to his disciples and to us. The true identity of Jesus Christ is that he is the Son of God, he is the King of heaven, and he has glory more than all the kings of this world.
More than the Amanyanam of... more than the Oba of whatever.
Yes.
Then in your own village, you don't even know the name of the king of your village. She doesn't know. Give her a round of applause. And I saw coming on the clouds of heaven one like a son of man. He came to the one of great age and was led to his presence. On him was conferred sovereignty and glory and kingship. And men of all peoples and nations and languages became his servants. They bowed before him. His sovereignty is an eternal sovereignty which shall never pass away, nor will his empire ever be destroyed. Give me an applause. Emmanuel.
I want to answer question 2.
Question 2, yes.
What is St. Peter saying to us in the second reading of today?
Yes.
He is saying that we're eyewitnesses of the majesty.
We are eyewitnesses of the majesty.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
And he wrote, "This is my beloved son."
Give him a round of applause. Yes. Mike Bull. Oh, is that Tony? Oh, Tony.
I would like to add to question 3. I think for me, the event of the Transfiguration, showing the true identity of Jesus, is Jesus' way of clearing the doubts. If the apostles have started having some little doubt. Now, Jesus was giving birth to in a time when there was law and order, the Pharisees were obeying the tradition, and this is what was handed down from Abraham, Moses. And then this person comes and he's being disruptive. Everything they had been told, he's not coming to overturn everything. So if at any point in time the apostles start having some little doubt, his invitation to what the picture of what the life after the temporary life here on earth looks like is what happened at the Transfiguration. So they were so mesmerized that
positively flabbergasted.
Exactly, Father. So much that Peter did not even know what he was saying. The beauty was too much, and if that was just a pinch of it, Peter goes further in the second reading to say, and then added to Daniel to say, this is what it will look like at the end. So we should not be comfortable here, because there's something bigger for us.
Pictures are very important. Pictorial presentations are very important. Those who, the staff here and others who have visited our prefects workshop, each year I get the prefects who come, young leaders, to do a drawing of the Nigeria of their dream. I've been doing that each year. Say, draw the Nigeria of your dream. Make a pictorial presentation of the Nigeria of your dream. And you know what? I believe that many of them come up with wonderful ideas, big dreams about the Nigeria that they desire to have. The fact that you have such a picture in front of you is a stimulus for moving towards that which you have dreamt of. They tell people who want to slim, people who are a bit vertically challenged, and then who want to slim, to do a drawing of themselves in the slim manner in which they would want to see themselves. You understand? And put, where? On the fridge. On the door of the fridge. So each time they are going to the fridge to take something, they see their slim self and they say, no, I can't have this Fanta. I can't have this ice cream. I can't have this cake. Do you understand? If I want to be like this figure. A figure, is it 7 or 8? If I want to be like this figure 8, because 7, you get how it be. Okay. If I want to be like this figure 8, then I can't have this. Putting the picture of where we are heading for, what our destiny is like in front of us, has a way to propel us along the path of that dream. Do you understand that? So what Jesus Christ did for them was to present a picture of not only his own future glory, but also their own future glory in him. So that Peter was now saying in the second reading that what you are hearing is no ordinary myth, no story. We saw it ourselves. We were there on the mountain and we saw it. And it has created a hunger in us to want to be there. Do you understand? I want an adult who has issues to answer question 4. Because the children that were attempting to answer it, they have not had the issues yet, seriously. Reflect for a moment on the story of the transfiguration of Christ. What is the Lord saying to you in your present life circumstances? Yes, Uche. You have issues. Well, share with us.
Yeah, I admit I have issues like every human being, daily challenges and all that. I reflected on it, and personally I would say the Lord is telling me that He's using the circumstances of my life to transform me, so that He will be able to say, He can see the image of Himself in me and say, this is my beloved daughter, in whom I'm well pleased.
Who no like good thing? Yes, Grace.
I've reflected, and I want to say, in life circumstances, when we are faced with a lot of life circumstances, our focus, my own life circumstances, which are many and numerous, I've learned to be, from this story of the transfiguration of Christ, I've learned to be focused on Christ. That irrespective of what I'm going through, good or bad, but most especially the bad ones, even the good ones, that I should not shift my attention from Christ
to the good things.
To the good things. So that I will not feel too comfortable here on earth as to miss the glory in heaven. And I will not be so saddened
by the bad things.
By the bad things, not to see what Christ can do, the good Christ can do out of the bad things I face each day. Thank you.
So, you mean that, wait, no, you're not finished. You mean that when bad things are happening to you, there could be a message there?
Yes. For every bad thing that happens, there's always a message.
From who?
From Christ. Now, if we make time to listen to Him through His word.
Now, you mean that when good things are happening to you, you could get carried away with the good things?
Sure. I could think that, by my power I was able to make this. By my power I'm able to do this. But I should not forget that if I don't have health, which only Christ can give, I can't even enjoy those good things.
What if you got health insurance?
No, it's not about health. Which health insurance? Health insurance that you have, and when you go there, you can only get the cheapest drugs. The costly ones, they will not even give you. You have to still go and buy outside.
We shall improve. We shall improve.
No matter the improvement, it cannot replace the insurance that Christ gives us.
Give her a round of applause. Okay. Jesus' true identity revealed. The event of the Transfiguration is recorded almost word for word in all 3 synoptic gospels. Synoptic gospels, that is similar gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The story of the Transfiguration is recorded almost what? Word for word. Matthew chapter 17 verse 1 to 9, Luke chapter 9 verse 28 to 36, and Mark chapter 9 verse 2 to 10. There are few stories that are recorded exactly in the three Gospels, the same, and recorded in almost the same way. In each Gospel account, the event is set on Jesus' road to Jerusalem. What was he going to do in Jerusalem? He was going to face a violent death, like other prophets before him. He was not going to receive chieftaincy title. He was not going to receive national award. He was going to face a violent death. He was on his way to the city where he would be rejected and condemned and tortured and crucified. Anyone would naturally recoil at such a fate. Yet, Jesus was committed to his Father's will. He was determined to go on. My food is to do the will of the one who sent me. Now, on their way up to Jerusalem, taking with him Peter, James, and John, he went there to Mount Tabor to reflect and to pray over the adversity that was soon to follow. Let's outline what he went up to do. He went up there, to seek the face of the Father. 2, to find encouragement. 3, to obtain strength for the journey. To seek the face of the loving Father. To get assurance from the Father that he knows is loving. To find encouragement. To obtain strength for the journey. Now, as he prayed, he had a marvelous experience. True Christian prayer is like a transfiguration experience. That is why I am worried, and I keep getting worried about the noisy enterprise that Nigerians call prayer. True prayer is meant to be a theophany, meaning an appearance of God. True prayer is not only transforming, it is transfiguring. It is not supposed to be only to transform, it's supposed to be to transfigure entirely. So in the case of Jesus, his face shone like the light. His clothes became dazzlingly white. And something significant happened that the three Gospels did not fail to record. There appeared with him Moses and Elijah. Moses had passed on for more than 3,000 years. Elijah had passed on for about 700 years. There appeared to him Moses and Elijah. Then the voice of the Father was heard from heaven saying what? This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him. It was a most glorious moment for the disciples. They had never seen anything like this before. They had not even heard of something like this. Perhaps the nearest they heard is that Elijah rode a chariot to heaven. Elijah rode a power bike to heaven. They were confounded. They were mesmerized. The glory they witnessed was beyond description. They couldn't adequately describe it. Peter then requests that they remain there on the mountain. It was too sweet, too good to abandon and start coming down to the valley. the Transfiguration was a rare moment at which the veil which separates the visible from the invisible, the veil which separates the present from the future was removed. At that moment, brief moment on Mount Tabor, the visible and the invisible became one, came together. The separation between the visible and the invisible was removed. The separation between the present and the future was what the disciples, Peter, James, and John saw was the future, isn't it? Was the future glory of Jesus and the future glory of themselves. In that instant, there was no distinction between present and future. The veil that separated the present and the future was removed. It was what? A theophany, an epiphany, a revelation. You know what we celebrate on January 6th, the feast of Epiphany. God showing himself to the people, right? That is exactly what happened. Something similar happened at the baptism of Jesus in the Jordan. The Spirit of the Lord descended upon him, and a voice was heard from heaven which said, "This is my Son, the beloved. My favor rests on him." Matthew 3:17. For Jesus, the Transfiguration was a moment of profound encounter with God. And he needed that encounter. Just as we also need that encounter from time to time. For our confirmation, for our encouragement, for our source of strength. At that time, when the Spirit exploded with brilliance on Jesus, when he had a rare glimpse of God's face, when heaven broke through to earth, when a chord of indescribable joy was touched within him. He was going to Jerusalem, don't forget. He was going to suffer and to die. And he had this experience, and a chord of indescribable joy was struck within him. It was a time when he felt clearly the love of God. Now take note. Sisters and brothers, take note. Jesus was going to suffer and to die a violent death, and he experienced in a profound way the love of God. For many of us, that love of God can only be shown in taking us away from the suffering, right? This is the part of the Christian gospel that has not been well preached in our environment. Or maybe it is being preached and my people have refused to accept this part. That Jesus was going to his definite death, suffering and painful, violent death. And on the way, he felt clearly and in a profound way, what? The love. Is it the rejection of God? The love of God. The assurance he got gave him strength for the grim future. Is it a very happy future? For the grim future. For the sad days ahead. For the turbulent days ahead. For the adversities ahead. He got assurance. Assurance of strength. Now, memories of the event, we believe, sustained him through the period of adversity, through the passion. We should all, and I have always said this, we should all be seeking for some kind of encounter that can be our source of strength through the night tunnel. Through the tunnel of night. Because people who have such experience, like St. Paul on the way to Damascus. Now, you see how St. Paul lived ever after. No matter what happened. When he remembers that phenomenal experience, it's like Moses at the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3. With what happened with Moses, Not to talk of what happened subsequently on Mount Sinai when he was face to face with God. But let us say the one that was recorded clearly at the burning bush. Moses could not forget that all his life. The transfiguration experience came at a very difficult time for Jesus, as I've been saying. A time of what? Uncertainty and loneliness and fear. On that mountain, he was affirmed by Moses and Elijah. You know, Jesus had said, referring to David, Jesus had said that the God we serve is a God of life and not death. And so those who live in God are alive. Right? And so Moses is alive. Elijah is alive. Of course, you know that both of them, we don't know where they were buried, isn't it? Elijah rode power bike to heaven, and Moses just disappeared. Buried by the angels. And if it is angels that bury you, you know that you are... He was affirmed by Moses and Elijah. He was comforted by the voice of the Father. He knew the Father was with him. He knew he enjoyed the Father's favor. So he could face any adversity. For as St. Paul says, nothing could separate him from the love of God. It is very significant that Moses and Elijah appeared before him. The presence of Moses and Elijah is very, very significant. Moses represents what? The law by which God established a covenant with his people. And when the Old Testament talks about the law, the Old Testament is talking of Genesis to which book? Up to the book of Deuteronomy. That is the law. Everything God did to start a people after his name is called the law. It's not just Exodus chapter 20 where the 10 commandments were given. That's not the law. When they say the law, it is the entire relationship that God established from the time of creation to the time that Moses left them. That is the law. And when the Bible calls the prophets, what does it mean? Everything else from the book of Joshua to the end of the Old Testament is called the prophets. So everything in the Old Testament came out to confirm that this is the man. This is the one the world is waiting for. Elijah represents the prophets who continually reminded the people of the covenant that they signed with God, and he scolded them, chastised them for their unfaithfulness. Both the ancient lawgiver, Moses, and the ancient prophet, quintessential prophet, Elijah. Elijah is the prophet of all prophets. He is the one that the Jews speak about with a lot of nostalgia. Never was there a prophet like Elijah. So, the quintessential lawgiver Moses and the quintessential prophet Elijah, both of who were reputed not to have been buried anywhere under the sky, they were around to give testimony. They confirmed that God has indeed finally intervened in history by sending this man here that we are standing with. Their presence there was to confirm that, yes, we attest to it, we are from heaven. We attest to it that God has fulfilled his promise. He has intervened in history by sending this person standing here, the Messiah. This is why they were there. For the disciples, the transfiguration was meant to do what? 1, reveal the true glory of Jesus to them. 2, confirm the course Jesus had taken. 3, Strengthen them for the scandal of the cross. The cross is always a scandal. Suffering is always a scandal. No wonder my people who have not really truly accepted Jesus find it so difficult. We were not the first to find it difficult. It has always been a scandal. I mean, look at what the Jews said. I'm talking of the common people who are standing around the cross. You say you are the Son of God. Come down now so that we can know that you are the Son of God. If you don't come down, then all you are saying nonsense. So the cross is always a scandal. Because left for human beings, what human beings would like to do is to show their power instantaneously. Right? But is that how God works? Aka ohomorihi okokokoko ogene mezina ochiji mokare. Udaji nsu hotenyi. But the one I want to say is ochiji mokare. The one who judges in silence. In absolute silence. I mean, our judges here, we have one other judge here. Our judges here, when they judge, they hold a, what do you call it? A hair. And they hit the table. Boom. There is no doubt that judgment has been passed, isn't it? There's no doubt. But our God is Ochijimokare, the one that does his judgment. Their fragile faith in Jesus. They were still struggling to believe in Jesus as the Messiah, right? Their fragile faith in Jesus would soon be shaken and tried and tested. And because of that, they were taken up the mountain for this confirmation. Before then, the Transfiguration revealed to them that Jesus is both the glorious Son of God and the suffering Messiah. Before this suffering begins to occur seriously, the disciples were taken up the mountain where it was revealed to them that this Jesus, who is going to suffer these tribulations, is both the glorious Son of God and the suffering servant. See, the passage of Isaiah, of Daniel that we read, chapter 7 that we read that in league with chapter 53 of Isaiah. Chapter 53 of Isaiah describes the suffering servant. But it is the same person that Daniel discusses today in the passage we read. The one who is presented before the Ancient of Days and before whom peoples of all nations bowed in worship. That it is the same person. Now the problem is that many of us refuse to accept that it is the same person. And even among those sitting before me and those watching, people refuse to accept it is the same person. Don't we have it drummed in our ears every day that if you are serving God and serving Him well, nothing will happen to you? That's what people want to believe. That's what people want to believe. But Isaiah tells us that far as the heavens are from the earth, so far are the ways of God from our ways, His thoughts from our thoughts. If we approach God, if we approach religion, if we approach Christianity with that understanding, then it will be easier for us. His ways are not our ways. We must approach God with that humble understanding. His ways are not our ways. Because if we approach God with the template that we had from our African traditional religion, then we will have problems. As we are having problems. That is why there may be somebody here who comes to worship the Lord today and celebrate the Eucharist, and next tomorrow he's in one shrine consulting. Why? Because he does not accept. And he's going to that shrine because he says, look, I mean, it's the same God that Juju priest is using now. That Dibia is the same God. I prefer his methods. Your people, whom my people used to go and collect this. The people from whom my people used to go and collect aruka, they walk, they take vehicle. Where they walk ahead. They want quick action, sharp. And our God doesn't walk sharp. If he walks sharp, the question that, is it Wayemi or Ekene asked 2 Sundays ago, that how can God has promised to change the world for the past 2,000 years. How is it that it has not yet happened? Right? That's the one that Chibike answered. That with God, 1,000 years is like... My dear friends, with the Transfiguration, the disciples got a glimpse of the glory of the risen Lord. They got a glimpse. Mike is right. That you can understand it beginning from the gospel. Through the second reading to the first reading. Perhaps it's easier to understand it that way. Because the first reading from Daniel now shows in clear terms that glory that they got a little glimpse of in the gospel. Do you understand? They saw themselves, now listen, they saw themselves reflected in the image of Jesus' transformed self. Jesus was not transformed only for Jesus' own sake. Jesus was transformed in order that in the mind of the disciples that are watching, they will see the future that awaited them. And for us who are celebrating it today and reading this, so that we may see the future that awaits us. So that even when we are enjoying and having good times, as Grace says, we may not settle fully for those good times and forget where we are headed for, where we are supposed to be going. So that when we are facing bad times and adversities, we may not get distracted by sadness over the adversities of today, forgetting the glory that awaits us. From this experience, the disciples knew they had a potential, a lot of potential. Just as we ourselves should know that we have a lot of potential. They could become much more than they were. They could be much more than anyone in the world expected of them. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, you know what? You could become much more than you think you are. You could become much more than anyone in the world ever imagined of you. Yet, they did not understand the implications of these events until after Jesus had risen from the dead. After all this, do you think they still understood? No. Until after the resurrection. The Transfiguration event is filled with light and hope. The word hope was already mentioned. The Transfiguration event is filled with light and hope, foreshadowing the light and hope of the resurrection. You know that soon after this time, there was the suffering in Jerusalem and the crucifixion and the death. It was followed by the resurrection. History must, however, take its course. Between this time of glory, of a brief vision of glory, and our eternal glory, history must take its course. Since belief in God often does not offer escape from history and its harsh dimensions. Unfortunately. Right? As we sit down here, if many of us, if we were God, we would do it differently. That those who believe in us, we will shield them from any, especially when there are many people who don't believe in us. What are we to use to show that those who believe in us are right? Things should go very well for them. But with our God, it is not often like that. Belief in our God is not an insurance policy against sickness, against disaster, against tribulations. You remember I told you the example of St. Teresa of Avila? That St. Teresa of Avila was running to go and do something for God, seriously. And as she was running, she fell down. As she fell down, she bruised her knees and bruised her body, and she got up, and as she was dusting herself, she said, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few of them. And indeed, true friends of God are few. Let's not be deceived by the crowds that are in churches. True friends of God are indeed few. The resurrection of Jesus, however, is for us cause for profound joy and stimulating hope. With the transfiguration, the disciples saw themselves in new light as they will be glorified. As we celebrate the event, we too can see ourselves in new light. Amen? Amen. We are not meant to celebrate this only as story, to tell a history. No, we are to reenact it. And God is present to make us experience it, not just to tell a story. We are to see ourselves in new light as we will be taken up in glory when it is all fulfilled. Take note of the expression, when it is all fulfilled. If you ask me, why is it that somebody who is very faithful, who is a very good Christian, doing all his best, making all kinds of sacrifices, why is he not making progress? I say because it is not yet all fulfilled. Do you understand? And we do say that the greatest mistake of the prosperity gospel is that they have missed the gap between the already and the not yet. The greatest mistake of the prosperity gospel is to imagine that it is all already fulfilled with Jesus' first coming. Is it? No. In the meantime, in the time in between, suffering is not a probability, it is a certainty. In the meantime, in the time in between the first coming of Jesus and the second coming of Jesus, suffering, I say, is not a probability, it is what? A certainty. A few days ago, I had a talk. Dr. Jekile was there. I had a talk on a major conference on stability and security in Nigeria, and I said that our situation is not changing because a lot of people are benefiting from the rotten system. It is not in the interest of maggots in the latrine that the latrine should be cleaned up. Is it? It is not in the interest of maggots in the latrine that the latrine should be cleaned up. So if you find yourself in that environment and you are striving to get clean, you think the maggots will like you and celebrate you, you will be a threat and you are going to be made to suffer. The transfiguration reveals the destiny of every human being in God. Indeed, the transfiguration reveals the destiny of every creature in God. This is one reason why every person must be respected. And indeed, every creature of God must be respected. There is that dimension in Pope Francis's document Laudato Si. Not only every person is going to be glorified when it is all fulfilled, every creature of God will be glorified. Can we read this slowly? The transfiguration reminds us that when all is fulfilled, everyone will recognize the Lord in his full splendor and glory and majesty. They will all fall on their knees and worship him. But, like Peter, James, and John, we believers have already seen his glory. So let us worship him now. For us, it is not meant to be only a future. Part of it has already happened. We have already experienced some transfiguration. As we read the gospel, reflect on it. And we do experience some more of it in the Eucharistic celebration. Like Jesus on his way to Jerusalem, Life for many of us could sometimes be what? Hard. We could be faced with poverty and unemployment, sickness and pain, failure in career or business, loneliness and rejection, persecution and unfair judgment, humiliation and condemnation, problem marriage, problem children, husbandlessness, or wifelessness. Well, since you guys want me to be adding it, okay. Wifelessness and husbandlessness. Now, what kind of attitude? This is where the critical question. What kind of attitude do we adopt when faced with suffering and adversities? That's the critical question. The issue is not whether there will be suffering or not. We know there will be suffering, right? The question is, what attitude? At such times, do we know how to go up to the mountaintop? At such times, do we need to know how to ascend to that lonely place to pray and to reflect, to receive the light of hope, to see the larger picture? You know, they talk about having a greater perspective, a wider perspective, to see that God's hand could be in all this. Because often what happens is that, who said that when you have problem, don't think of the size of your problem, but think of the size of God, right? Often what happens is that we magnify the problem and we cannot see beyond the problem. But when we go upstairs, when we go up the mountain, from top of the mountain we see wider, isn't it, than the valley. To see the larger picture, to seek the face of God and be reassured, to hear those consoling words of the Father. Can you read? You are my beloved Son. I have you in the palm of my hands, so you will not be worsted. So, let's read again. At times of adversity, what is your usual response? At times of adversity, do you know how to ascend to the mountaintop to connect with the Lord who has a purpose and who gives meaning to every event of your life? Discuss this with your neighbor. At times of adversity, what is your usual response? Do you know how to ascend to the mountaintop and connect with the Lord who has a purpose and who gives meaning to every event of your life? Okay, we continue the discussion after. We shall continue the discussion after Mass. Now, let us read the lines above. Listen to Jesus and follow him. That is the simple message of the Transfiguration. Again, listen to Jesus and follow him. That is the simple message of the Transfiguration. We have a poem. Come, go with me. Come, go with me to the mountain top, where the present glimpses on the future, and the already gazes on the not yet. Come, go with me to the heights, where the cross beholds the crown. and the mortal kisses the eternal. Come, go with me to the hill crest, where the ground is decked with truth, and the earthly is inducted into the heavenly. Come, go with me to the highlands, where humanity is momentarily transformed into divinity, and the flesh is dazzled by luminosity itself. Come, go with me to Mount Tabor, where frightened men are enthused and anxious hearts are consoled. Yes, come with me to the mountain of God, where ancient men give witness to the Ancient of Days, and you and I shall be transfigured into his image. Yes, come, go with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We praise you. We glorify your holy name. Thank you for the feast of the Transfiguration. Thank you for this phenomenal event recorded in the 3 synoptic gospels that highlights the glory that awaits us. Thank you for the privilege of our having a glimpse through Peter, James, and John of what glory truly awaits us. By your grace, let this be a major source of encouragement to all who are discouraged. By your grace, let this be a major source of strength to all who are weak and are on the verge of giving up. By your grace, let this be a stimulus, a major source of motivation for us to carry on, knowing that I know my Redeemer lives, knowing that I know the glory that awaits me through Christ our Lord.